Morning, everyone. Starting a little early this morning because I guess not that much earlier. I was almost planning to start 15 minutes earlier, but that just didn't happen. But market's crazy, so kind of thought I'd might be worth jumping on a little bit earlier. I made sure I got my red mug today because bears are coming out. The bears are here. Will they stay? We'll find out. Hope everyone had a good weekend. It was crazy to see taking off Friday, and then I looked at the stock market like at 8 p.m. that night, and then saw that the craziness that happened. I was like, oh my god. Definitely the one day I take off is like the biggest move in over, I don't what it was like over a year easily, which was just crazy. I saw people being like, "Oh, it's the biggest move of all time," and it's like, well, points wise, but that doesn't really count since it's kind of an exponential graph. It's got to be more or logarithmic. It's got to be more percentage move. Can I explain support and resistance zones? I will say, I don't know if you've gone and seen my video on reversal zones. That definitely will explain a lot of them. Like if you go to my YouTube channel, scroll down a little bit, this video does definitely talk through a lot more detail that I won't go over right now. About how I draw my levels, but I'll definitely walk you through some of them right now while I'm drawing them, Tolby. So hopefully that answers your question enough, but I definitely obviously can't spend like 15 minutes answering that. But I'll definitely walk through my levels a little bit more detail this morning for you when I look at them in a second. Mainly, I'm just going to be looking at the NASDAQ for anyone who didn't see it last week. I'm actually planning to just trade the NASDAQ now for a while. I'm not even looking at the ES. Just the simplicity, that's what I'm kind of going for. I thought, I felt like it was a little too much in terms of, it was just adding too much. And I don't think it, over time with the data, it didn't really tell me that there was really an important amount of information added. So on a daily though, I like this as a zone for a potential bounce. I mean, before even the sell-off, my thought was like, okay, the first kind of major support would be here. I didn't think it'd happen this fast. I don't know when obviously did, but that's definitely what I'd be looking for. Big picture. Oh, and this is on I need to change this to M. So I mean, definitely like we've ripped down to an area where I would consider us to potentially bounce. Obviously, big picture move like that. There's a lot that can happen from a move like that. First off would be, even just like a 50% Fibonacci pullback of this. Just recovering that would be a big thing. I think that just makes sense. Like, I think we're going to hit this today, probably pre-market, it looks like at this rate. And at that point, we could go either direction. Another thing to think about is this previous high. We might pop up here, test this previous high, and that could be a spot where we want to reverse as well. off of, you know? Basically, it's like, okay, crazy move, pull back a little bit for some healthy price action, and then are we just gonna gobble that up and continue higher? Or are we gonna retest this and kind of see what happens from there? Just gonna look at a 15-minute chart to see anything else. In terms of Tolby for like levels breaking, obviously last week a lot of levels were breaking, and so that kind of just was because we were kind of shifting from, you know, this move up where the supports were holding a lot, and then obviously the resistance levels were breaking because we were just constantly making new highs, and then shifting to, now we shifted to a downtrend where it's like, okay, the supports were sometimes holding it a little bit, but then obviously breaking. And so like that's the hard part about why you got to take the trend into account with a lot of your levels, is because you know, if you're in a downtrend, you want to be careful with support zones versus the other way, because support zones are more likely to break now. Even this zone here, it's like, you know, it's potential that we break it easier now because we are in such a big sell-off. But we're pretty much, in terms of at least where this move started, we're pretty much at the 50% pullback. I think it's on the daily chart, it was a little higher. Obviously, this is a very unhealthy move that it looks like we're popping up some. I think it just remains to be seen how much it does that. With moves like this, I mean, a lot of people got destroyed Friday. Like that's what just happened with a huge move like that, is so many people, you know, were aggressively long because, well, for the last couple months, aggressively long has seriously paid off. And so people would have been piling on more and more. And then something like this just destroys people. And so there's a couple scenarios where, okay, a bunch of people get in long again, thinking it might just, that's it. And, you know, they don't want to miss out on a crazy, amazing pullback. But I almost find a lot of the times with these moves, it's almost like, okay, something's changed. People might not be as confident to jump in long. Like, would you really want to jump in long after a massive candlestick like that? It just opens up the door to the, I think the fear that, well, what if we do that again? You know, why has something changed like this? And from what I saw briefly is that it's, you know, I mean, like, I don't know exactly why it did this. But a big reason was, you know, the jobs posting happened on Friday. And I think, you know, that spooked people that maybe the market's getting too hot. And it just increases the likelihood of the Fed raising interest rates, which is not good for the market as a whole. Just going to look at oil here. Oil hasn't really done much from this move. I mean, the move wasn't really related to oil. Oil's still just kind of in this wedge on a daily chart. So I don't really see much going on there, to be honest. Sell-off freeing up cash for SpaceX IPO. Yeah, this week is going to be interesting with that as well. Seeing the stuff about it, I think what it's not going on the S&P 500 right away, but it is going on the NASDAQ pretty quickly. It's going to be, you know, there's so many predictions about what will happen. I think it's very hard to actually know. You know, with you know, you always think, oh, well, it's extremely overvalued. Why would it just go up from there? But you know, everything's overvalued right now to some extent. You know, you could say that about all the AI stuff. And it's just like, well, it doesn't really matter. If someone wants to buy it, they're going to buy it. And that's going to push the price up. It'll eventually, obviously, crater to something that's more reasonable. But who knows when that is? You know, you could look at Tesla for the years and years. And you could just say, oh, well, Tesla's, people who are trying to short Tesla for the last decade have been getting destroyed. So it's always like, that's kind of the risk of trying to think stuff is overvalued like that versus just trading it and seeing, okay, well, what's going on, How was my hike Friday? It was good. Yeah, I did like this big. I was actually gonna upload a short, but I was too lazy to edit it. Maybe I'll do it later, um, just for fun to show people. But just basically did a trail run of that kind of connected four peaks together, which was really cool. Always feels good to kind of get out. Obviously, I chose the wrong day to do that since the market just went crazy. And it was a bummer, actually, in hindsight, going back to Thursday. For those of you who were here Thursday, trying to jump in long, this was a frustrating to see in hindsight, was like that this, trying to stab in long here and having this one be the, final little straw before it then ripped higher. Which is kind of what I was looking for, but the market was just faking lower a bunch. And so having that kind of, knock me out kind of was, is the final stab lower where I could see that it probably would be, but getting burned once and then having it just keep the signal just not really working out. Makes it kind of hard to stab again at it. That's always hard to see in hindsight, but it's always at least like it doesn't. I feel like I would rather have that than the trade just completely not work out, because then it at least means that your read was good. Even on a 5-minute, someone says that bounce on an hourly looks amazing. I mean, even on a 5-minute, like this looks solid. Of trying to get in here and then having it just rip up like that. But charts aren't always going to work out in your favor every time. Sometimes there's going to be that kind of stuff's going to happen. Thanks for the checklist. You're welcome. Yeah, I hope I did release the checklist to everyone who has my indicator bundle. So you should be able to have this. If you want it. I kind of had a sale on it over the weekend, which I actually extended. If anyone missed out on that, because I know I try not to like just spam too much about that kind of stuff, because obviously it's annoying. But if anybody wants to get my indicators, you can find them here. Gold, I don't really look at gold. I really only look at the NASDAQ, sometimes oil. Oil's not really doing anything right now. And I think a good target today is definitely like popping up to this level. I mean, actually, like I'm on a 30-minute chart of the NASDAQ right now. This zone is pretty nice with these swings. It's definitely a good spot to see if it comes down and if that support zone, what was previous support, turns into resistance. Here you can see there was a little bounce here too. So I mean, I think it comes up here and kind of is like, okay, where do we go from there? the full, like if we give back the full, you could say fair value gap, just to turn this on this chart briefly, it's like there's all the way up to here. You know, the next major support level would be up there. Granted, you could come up anywhere up here because there's this kind of pretty big head and shoulders. And if this just bottoms, that's just crazy. I mean, that just doesn't really happen. But, you know, in this market, it could. It would be an insane V bottom. And so I think today is just going to be trying to be a little patient to see how we open, because a lot will have happened over the weekend. With a huge move like this, a lot of people will be caught in like margin calls, potentially. Now, a big thing is because the market closed down here, technically, is things are opening up a ton. Like if I just pull this up easily, we're going to open up 2% on the day for the Qs. And if we look at the S&Ps, we're going to open up a percentage almost. And I think the S&Ps were only down like 2.5. Yeah. So it's, but I'm just kind of looking at this of like, are the S&Ps really not bouncing that much? Oh no, they've bounced. Yeah, they closed down here and popped up here. That maybe just hasn't updated. But a big thing, so if you were in a long on Friday, right? And you know, let's say like more of a swing trade and you just get destroyed like this, you don't have a stop loss. Essentially, people are praying that this thing bounces over the weekend, right? Because the hope is like, okay, I'm just going to hold through this crazy thing. It's going to bounce and maybe it'll reverse, or I'll be able to get out at break even or reduce some of my loss. And because we're doing that, that's going to reduce a lot of the pressure on people that are in such a hole. But also that could cause a little bit of sell-off at the beginning of the day, because people might want to close out of those positions of just being like, okay, this is crazy, I'm going to get out. Or people will hold, and that'll put more pressure on the market going up because people are holding their longs, hoping that we continue higher. Versus if something like this happens and you open up flat and no bounce at all, those people are just still dead in the water in terms of how much they're down on their position. And if you start pushing lower, people start to really panic and you can get another flush of a day. So I don't think that's going to necessarily trigger this morning because obviously we've bounced already 50% of the move Friday. But that doesn't mean we won't take another stab lower. You know, I think we could still go either direction. But, you know, at the moment, we do seem like we have a lot of upwards momentum this morning. I actually haven't looked at news yet. Not really much news this morning. Actually, it's Monday, so there's actually no news this morning at all. Tomorrow, we don't have that much news. And then Wednesday, Thursday, we have a decent amount. So, what about the Trump news to affect it? Honestly, you got to be a little more specific. There's just constant Trump news going on. But, you know, I mean, like, I would say whatever has happened there, it's probably already reacted to it. You have an early edition of what's going to happen today. We pump then dump. I mean, I could totally see that. Like, gets a little excited. If we pop up like this, some people might jump in thinking, oh, we're just going to rock it up from here and this V bottom's going to play out. This is such a massive move. It just seems so unlikely. Like, a huge move like this doesn't happen for just no reason. You know, a lot of these volatile moves we've had, do get like gobbled up pretty quickly, but they're smaller moves. You know, you don't have this big of a move and have the market just bottom drastically, at least most of the time. Granted, you know, again, I still think anything could happen to some extent. But it's kind of hard to really think that we'll just rocket from the open. I mean, this looks like it's going to crash hard. You don't want to put an order in before the open. I wouldn't do that. Yeah. I mean, especially right now, it's like the market's got its trend that it's in right now, and that could just totally change in the first, 10 minutes. As always, like I'm going to wait to see what the first 10 minutes brings. I think if it pops up and looks like that could reverse, I would be totally into that. I mean, I think either direction, I would like to see a pop and then look to reverse that. Just because I think the market will just be very baity with everything that it's got going on right now. Would I trade other markets if things stagnated or crashed? No. Just because it's, for me, like, I mean, technically this volatility is good. I mean, the volatility we've had has been great. It's just not always you're not going to get everything fitting perfectly all the time. I find it easier for me to match kind of what's going on in that market and adjust based on things, in terms of how much I'm sizing in, how aggressively I'm trading. Recently, I've been trying to get more and more aggressive because the market is just so fast paced and shifting in NASDAQ. For people that have missed it, like I've shifted. Like last week, I decided to only trade the NASDAQ and not even look at the S&P 500 anymore, just because I think it'll make it simpler for me. I don't think the reads between the NASDAQ, like looking at the correlation and the patterns on the NASDAQ and the ES, I think that more often confused me than actually helped my clarity. And so I think it'll just be better for my actual trading of just focusing on the one. A lot of moves I didn't take, you took them and made money. I mean, more power to you, I find it almost more satisfying that people are able to take what I'm doing and do it better. Like I'm not perfect at this. I've got all this streaming stuff going on that affects my trading, and if honestly, it's a win to me if what I'm doing makes other people successful at it. So we're pretty much at the 50% level of where this move started. I think one other one would be just this whole swing. And that just puts us up at this resistance zone. So wherever you put this Fibonacci like retracement is either we're pretty much at it now based on just the move Friday, or if we hit the highs, that aligns up perfectly with what I'm calling is, I think, the next kind of major reversal zone. And so that I think is important. And so I think the biggest zone I'm looking at today is this previous high, two little bounces here. Actually, there's kind of a bounce right here. if I zoom in. And then from there is kind of seeing how do we react when we hit this? Because that's definitely where, okay, the easy money is gone in terms of the reversal. Now it could keep going. Like definitely there's a little bit more gap here in terms of this huge unhealthy move to give up. But I think definitely here is kind of the first major inflection point. Yeah, I got a couple minutes before we open here. Excited to see what happens. Let me know if you guys have any questions while we wait. I'll go through kind of what I'm seeing one more time. But you do need to subscribe to be able to ask a comment or ask a question. And if you haven't, please hit that like button. People were saying the job markets report caused the Friday drop. I could see some of that. Like, yeah, the stuff I saw on that was like, oh, that is going to trigger a potential rate hike. I mean, you could also say with oil being so high that inflation's going up. If oil is high, inflation is high. And so that means that rate hikes are going to happen. And maybe, that was just the final straw that triggered, okay, rate hikes are happening soon. The market's so frothy here. But also you can say that, like on a daily chart, we're in such a massive bull market right now with all this AI craziness going on. Like you could say, we're in an AI bubble. And if we are, it's like, who knows how long this is going to go? Like I wasn't around. Well, I was around, but I wasn't old enough to trade during the tech bubble of 2000. And it's like, but from what I've heard is like you can have, and if you look at like Bitcoin, right, going through those bubbles is like, this could go up for a long time before the bubble actually reverses, but it doesn't mean you're going to have crazy, it's just going to do this the whole time, right? You'll have big moves down in those kind of crazy markets that'll just be flushing people out because of how fragile things are to some extent. And so how jittery people are, they want to capture and they over leverage to the upside so much to try and capture, a move like this on the bubble side or the upside. And at times you'll have it to where something triggers a sell-off and it'll just be so sharp and huge because of how much over leveraging there is in the market. Think about like one of the original like Bitcoin bubbles. I can't even go that far back on this chart. But like when it was like hitting 10,000 for the first time, there were stories of like people taking mortgages out on their house and stuff, doing crazy things like that just put so much volatility potential in the market. Because anytime people feel any sort of pain in that kind of market, it's just going to do crazy things. What's the oil symbol in on futures? It's CL. $81 in oil is not a high anymore. Well, technically it's at 91, but I don't know a crazy thing about macroeconomics or too much, but when it comes to oil, from what I've learned, is that if it's up this high for this long compared to down here, that causes inflation. And especially for this long, because, oil affects everything. In terms of all your consumer goods, everything shipped, with every kind of product has to be moved from point A to point B, and that takes oil. And so that just increases the cost of everything. And so, and essentially that's how inflation is pushed. Should have bought, I wish I bought Bitcoin when I was like 5 years old too. But, hindsight, everyone's a millionaire. Getting a little bit of a slowdown into the market open. So big picture for people just coming in and just starting things. Obviously, Friday we had a crazy move. I think that using a Fibonacci tool retracement based on the high and the low here, 50% is about here. That would be a healthy pullback. And that actually aligns with, if I go to a 15-minute chart, with this major reversal zone here off of these levels. So I think, if this keeps going up, we're going to pop up and this will be a major inflection point. Smaller picture, we might not get there. We might open. I think a big thing is just seeing how this opens. Because of how big the move was Friday, we could open and just immediately sell off, or immediately, there's so many different scenarios, right? One thing to keep in mind that I kind of talked about earlier is with crazy moves like this is a lot of people are long holding through this pullback. And so they're down a crazy amount of money with how over leveraged people are right now in this market. And so what they're doing this morning is they are praying that we bounce and hold this to the upside, because that means that they are up a lot of money on the day. The market closed here basically on Friday, and it's going to open up here essentially. And so they're hoping that it recovers. And so they're probably holding through whatever trade they're in, if they're still in it. Obviously, a lot of people exited Friday because the market just went crazy down. But the people that are still in are hoping that this thing continues higher. But if it starts to push down here, I think we could flush to the lows pretty quickly, because people might start to exit out of fear of like, okay, well, this is the bounce we're going to get. I'm going to get out with as little loss as possible. And, knowing that, well, if this breaks, who knows how far we go, especially with having that kind of move happen. So that's, I think, kind of the downside risk. But again, I think that is going to come into a play of just seeing how the market reacts to this open, how that's going to actually happen. Because I definitely think it could go either way. We might hold, and those people are going to continue to hold. But I think if there's any little ticks to the downside, those people might start to bail very quickly. And we could, start to push the lows pretty quick. What do I think once price action reaches this zone? I think a big thing is seeing how it gets there. If we have a fake lower and then it punches up here, to me, that's more bullish. But if we get up here like way too overextended, I will definitely look for a potential short. So a lot of it's like, how healthy is the move up into this level? How is the market acting? Are we just going to be super strong and just blow through it and continue higher? I think anything in this market is possible right now. And so I'm going to, got to see how the first 10, 15 minute kind of plays out. And then just talking about like fair value gaps real quickly, because someone just mentioned that too. On a 15 minute, we definitely pretty much any chart actually has pretty big fair value gaps right now. And you could put it on a daily chart and there would be one. Actually, kind of interesting to see where the daily chart fair value gap would be. My indicator just glitched off there for a second. That would put it, for some reason it doesn't like this, but it would put it all the way up here. So, I mean, that's a huge, huge pop-up. But I think the, first is here, and then next is kind of this support level. See how big this candlestick is. This candlestick is like 80 points, which doesn't even look big right now. So, I mean, in terms of entering into this volatility too, you're going to have to trade a lot smaller contracts. Which session is it best to trade? I like only trading the first, 90 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes of the New York Stock Exchange Open. If you are able to trade that, just because that's where, there's a lot of volatility. The most volatility happens in the day. It's kind of like you can, for me, anyone new, like I like to look for kind of a move down to the support level and then look for kind of like something like a double bottom and look for a reversal. That's all I look for. I just look for reversals every day. And that's my strategy, and it just keeps it super simple. And you're able to, look for that in the morning. And then if it doesn't show up, just move on with your day. Trying to do everything that the market throws at you or react to everything that's going on just doesn't really work out very well. Be pretty interesting if we sell this move off. Like this is definitely on a 5-minute chart here. This is definitely kind of a unhealthy move. If we're gonna sell off, this is kind of like the first support zone I would look at. There's maybe kind of an uptrend here that we might hit. It's not super confirmed. There's just kind of 2 spots off of it, but maybe if we come down here, we could bounce off of that. But I mean, at the moment, this looks like it's kind of just wanting to rip lower a little bit. Feel like you're over trading because you're not sure what session. That just takes time to figure out which one you want to do. But definitely, I always find narrowing things down is better. Just keeps things simple. Simpler is always better. That's why, like for me, I was looking at the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ and trying to trade both of them, and it just caused a lot of confusion. And the reason why I only trade one is because essentially I was just trying to trade both because they're so correlated most of the time. That trying to trade both, I thought just, after really looking at it for a while and being patient with trying to get that data, is trading both just caused more confusion than clarity. And that's a big thing with having too many indicators is you think it's going to help, but a lot of the time it just causes more confusion than actual clarity. Could be doing a little bounce off of this spot. This does kind of align up with this. The market just ripped, hit this area, ripped lower again. I don't know why this is acting up today. But to me, this is like kind of a micro support. I don't really want to be taking a long off of here. Maybe if we really settle down and kind of show a really clean head and shoulders, I'll look for something there. How do I transfer zones between charts? All you do on NinjaTrader is just double click it to bring up the properties of the drawing tool, and then you can just have it click on this and it's all charts versus just the one. And then I actually save that as the default. You want to learn trading from scratch? I just released a 4-hour video last weekend on Saturday that of walking my brother through getting set up and everything in every little detail possible. So definitely that's a great starting point. Just waiting on this to see kind of how this opens. A big thing too is with that huge move Friday, you know, you really want to be engaged and focused on what's going on, but you also don't want to just, you know, just like with any major volatility, you don't want to just FOMO in, you know, because you're excited that you don't want to miss the next move. But you want to wait for that clarity to be there. I don't want to just buy here thinking, oh, well, what if this is it and we just rip up from here? If that's the case, it's just I'm not going to capture the move because that's not a trade for my strategy. Three days away from your payout. Congratulations. Definitely take it slow, you know, try not to put too much pressure on yourself. Definitely a little struggle here. I'm not thinking that this is going to necessarily bounce yet. You know, I think a lot of days like this, when the market opens, it's a lot of waiting to see who gives in first, and essentially. People, I think, jumping in too early can get you caught on the wrong side because there's so much going on from people seeing that huge sell off over the weekend and wanting to, you know, do something. Like people that go to their, you know, Vanguard or something, and they're like, okay, I need to sell a bunch of stuff because this market's crazy or something. You know, there's a lot of bigger picture stuff that starts happening from a sell off like that. We have high impact news at 10. I don't see anything today, at least on the US markets. And that's pretty much just what I watch. There could be stuff on other markets, but usually that doesn't hit things. You know, obviously there can be other news. But we'll just kind of see. A little bit of hurry up and wait this morning. Because I think if we break this level, we're gonna pop down to here very quick. Very quick, because this is a pretty solid fair value gap, and then we'd test this support level. This is where I would rather look for a bounce. This might be all we get. But to me, this isn't really looking great. You know, you don't want to just try and force things because it's like, oh, well, what if it bottoms here? To me, this isn't a solid looking bottom. There's no bottoming signal that's like really, really clean. You know, I like to wait for those flushes of where it really starts to get way too overextended, and then you get that snap, and then, you know, you can get long and it, you know, pulls back a little bit and then starts to go. But this is just, there's no solid bottom here. This could easily just push lower. You know, we could have some kind of downtrend like this. You know, it's just finding a little support here, but again, it's a micro support. And if it bounces, that's fine. You know, it's not about capturing every move. And I don't have a big picture reason to assume that or bias or read that this is just going to push higher in a big way. I don't think there's that much of an edge in that because, you know, looking at a big picture chart, again, I think we could go either direction from here. I think the better, you know, I think the long bias is much stronger down here. Here it's just, we're in the middle of this range. There, a lot could go either way. Why does your chart look so different than mine when you have live and correct data on? It's really hard to know. If your candlesticks are different, you know, sometimes it could be a connection issue, or make sure you have up to, you know, you're watching the stream with no delay, because there should only be like a 2-second delay on stream. I like to draw my support resistance zones off of a 15-minute or a 5-minute. You know, to me, that reduces the noise enough to be able to see, okay, where are the major swings? And really just looking at the major swings, not trying to look at every little spot. You know, I definitely draw a little one here. This is a micro one, but more just being like, okay, are we going to just retest the high of the pre-market and then just sell off? Or are we staying in this kind of downtrend here? When will there be another NinjaTrader competition? I'm not sure. Usually they're every couple of months, but that's definitely a new thing they're doing. So I don't know the full on schedule because I think it's like they're still kind of figuring out. Looks like we're at 50% retracement from Friday's move. Yeah, there's a couple 50% retracements actually I've been looking at. If I look at a daily chart, because it's kind of a little easier. Either you have from the full on highs to the low, that kind of puts us at, you know, this reversal zone. Or if you do the daily, we're hitting that perfectly. So that's kind of, you know, that's where it's like, okay, I think we're kind of hitting this now, might be a little resistance. But to me, definitely just to align things up, like this 50% level really aligns up with this reversal zone, which I think definitely will be interesting to see how it plays out. You know, I can draw that on this chart too. You know, that's kind of up here. That aligns up with this area, I think, really well. And then also, I think if you go off of Friday's open would be here. So we're hitting that perfectly right now. And that big picture, I like to use those as potential spots to reverse off of. Am I associated with NinjaTrader in any way? I do have a partnership with them. But frankly, I've used, I have an affiliate with them. Like if you sign up through my NinjaTrader link, I do get paid for that. But in all transparency as well, as I used NinjaTrader for years before that. So, it's just kind of something that made sense. And, so I would be, even without the partnership, I would still be trading on NinjaTrader and saying that I think this is the best platform for trading futures if that's what you want to do. I'm definitely not someone that's hopping from platform to platform based on where I get paid the most. Definitely kind of hitting this little downtrend. This is a nice little double top. To me, that looks like we'll probably test this. I want a bigger move than this. I don't want to really trade in this opening chop. That's one of the things of such a volatile move. You get excited and it's easy to jump in too early before things start to move. How does the risk work? Like as low as $4? So in reality, that's $4 to trade for live data for demo trading on NinjaTrader. It is kind of the lowest of any platform to do that on. And in terms of real risk per trade, it's actually around like $20. So that's just a little bit of gamifying, YouTube tutorials, because that's just kind of how you have to play the game of the algorithm. But so really you can risk, and it depends on what you're trading and the volatility of the market. So really on the MES, which is the micro S&P 500 futures, that one contract, depending on the market volatility, can be like anywhere between $20 and $50. Why is your MNQ margin smaller today? Depending on, based on versus Friday. Friday definitely would have shot up the margin requirements because of volatility. And so the margin requirements can change based on crazy moves. Like on Friday, the brokerages, to protect themselves, are going to increase your margin requirement per contract. And today they're going to reduce it a little because the volatility is most likely lessened, especially with this pullback here. I mean, if we just look at the VIX, the VIX is down 10% today compared to Friday. This won't even show it very well, but like obviously Friday it popped up a crazy amount, up to 20, which is big in the last, couple months. But it's down today, and so technically they're going to reduce the margin requirements because of that. And then over here, is probably even less because like the volatility isn't that much. And so over time, as the volatility dries up, if it does, that'll get reduced and reduced. Just looking at this on a 5-minute, I mean, like we're just not at a spot where I want to trade. I don't think it's a gamble 50-50 right now of either direction. You can make a case for either direction. And even then, like, it might not even move that well for a while. I think it's way better to wait for some volatility show up and then look for a trade once that happens. Because right now, it's just so easy to enter in something and just get chopped up. Do you need to install any other tools with NinjaTrader? No. I mean, I have like a bunch of little indicators that I have that improve it, but you know, no. Like the platform's pretty dang solid by itself. All my little indicators that I have are really just quality of life. How did I pull up the VIX chart? That was literally just Google. I literally just Googled VIX chart and pulled it up. NinjaTrader is free, I think, through my link. You get, I think, 14 days free of live data. After that, you do have to pay. You can get data for like $4 a month, which is pretty dang small. Some people say you do need to continue demo trading, you do need to deposit money, but I think someone says you can literally deposit $1 if you want. How was my hike? Good. It was technically a trail run. I don't really have a good. I might make a short and upload it at some point just to show quickly, but my wife and I pretty much just did a big trail run that connected 4 mountains together. You know, and we're in Colorado, so the mountains are like 14,000 feet elevation. We're getting big into ultra marathons, and I almost want to get more into mountain ultra marathons that are a little more technical, where it's like very rocky and scrambly and not just like a nice easy trail. Just sitting on this chop here. You always have so much anticipation over the weekend of after such a big move, and then you show up Monday and nothing happens. And that's just something you got to be ready for that sometimes too, because if you are too excited, it's just so easy to FOMO in after a move like that and just lose your shirt Monday morning when nothing is happening. You made an account and don't seem to have the live data. Um, yeah, maybe you have to wait. Honestly, I don't know, to be honest. Some of that, I don't know the back end fully. So it's hard to me to help fully. You find it hard to work through NinjaTrader versus TradingView? I think switching to any platform is always annoying. To me, like using TradingView seems frustrating because again, everything's just slightly different. And you know that's why it's personal preference. Like you don't have to use NinjaTrader, even though that's what I suggest. Um, by all means, it's all personal preference. Like do whatever you can get access to, and you prefer. Just in a chop fest right now. I'd be very surprised if this doesn't break at some point. Just gotta be patient and wait it out. What distance was the run? I think it was like 10 miles. It wasn't crazy long. The nice thing was everything was pretty dang close together. Let me see if I can find like a... I took some videos that I might like make a short out of. Just trying to see if I have one that kind of shows it well enough. Getting a little movement here. That's kind of nice. See if this shows anything. Maybe we'll get some movement. Oh, and it just froze. My computer can't handle playing a little video. Oh no. My chart's still moving, but looks like my a lot just crashed trying to do that. Wow. That was weird. But this is just like, yeah, I don't know. This quality's not working. I'm just gonna close that, seeing as for some reason my stuff's acting up. How accurate on stop loss and profit take on NinjaTrader? I don't know exactly what you mean, but you can have. I don't get really slippage and stuff. Like execution on NinjaTrader is great. A little bit of a stab here. Interesting to see if this just gets rejected. If this just pops up here, gets rejected. But if we, this could be the start of an actual move down. So just going to watch that and see. The price difference you will see if you're trading NASDAQ is I am on the MNQ right now. Because I'm scaling in, and with the volatility, even to trade, like for me, I like to scale in half size right now, and that's about $800. And so that's like 6 contracts if I entered in here, my stop loss here, and so that's not even one full contract. So that's why I'm on the MNQ, which does technically usually have a little bit of a price difference. What mounts is that? I'm in Colorado, so that was somewhere south of like Breckenridge area. I do live trade every day that I trade, which is usually 4 to 5 days a week. Still just seeing how this plays out. To me, this looks like it wants to continue lower. Volume's crazy high. I mean, I'm not looking for a reversal yet, I mean, to me, I do think I want to see kind of what's going on. It is 10 o'clock, which is technically a reversal timing. But I think to me, this is a minor level. Could it be just a little fake lower below this low and this low right here, I think it'll depend on what this bounce here looks like. If we give this back up, this big candlestick, to me that's a pretty good signal. But I'm not just going to jump in long right here. I want to see, especially today, I want to see if it pulls back and looks like it's going to actually continue higher. I'm not going to be aggressive on a V bottom right now because we're choppy. I think that increases the odds that we're going to be choppy as well. This could be doing just a little bounce here. Essentially retest this level. If this is going to go down, it's essentially pulling back, testing these lows, and then it will continue lower. So that's the potential right now. So that's why I don't want to just jump in long. Ideally, it would be seeing if that reversal goes like this, but we haven't really given back this big candlestick. And to me, that's a big short signal. And, maybe today just if, things, even along here doesn't feel that great. We're not at a good level. The market's just kind of funky. I still might not even take a long if it sets up a little higher low right here. Like this could be an aggressive entry to take a long. Little pullback here with the breakout higher does, to me, like that is an aggressive signal. But I think right now I don't want to jump in on an aggressive signal because I think it's just, I want to see more of a double bottom here to go longer. Especially after seeing this reject. I think today is just not a V bottom day, at least at this level. If we get to more an extreme and a stronger level, that's a different case. But this is just a micro level right now. I would rather see us pop down to here. And if we do kind of pop here, I'm not against taking a stab with the idea that, popping up here would be a decent reversal. But that means, this fake lower needs to really, I think, play out nicely. 5 minute, I just, there's no signal, I think, to long right now in a 5 minute. So that's why it's hard on days like this, especially when it's a little choppy. That's how, FOMO works, is you start to try and take a trade at a level that's just not as solid. Because, you want to be in action, especially with the volatility we have right now. And even if it maybe plays out, it doesn't necessarily mean it was actually a good spot to enter in on a trade. How do I know which stocks to trade? I pretty much just trade the NASDAQ futures. That's all I look at. I don't jump between stocks. To me, just trading one market allows you to master it. And then I just trade, the first 60 to 90 minutes in the morning. Because the open of the normal stock market has a lot of volatility a lot of the time and good trades that you can find. And then you can kind of just be done with the day and move on. Because the longer you trade, the more fatigued you're going to get and worse your decisions are going to be. If this pops up and breaks this, that is a pretty nice double bottom signal. I think I'm not against scaling in here with that signal. I'd like to see a little bit of a pullback here. But to me, it's, again, it's just sizing in a little bit with seeing the potential of what could happen here. I'm not sold on it, so I think I'm only going to do half size. I don't think I'm going to scale in again if we pull back. And it's a little nerve-wracking getting in there. I didn't really check off my list here, but why I'm doing this is because, I'm trying to be more fluid with jumping in when I see my signal, and not waiting for perfect clarity all the time. Especially because we're kind of at that 10 o'clock. This is a pretty nice double bottom. I almost wanted to wait for this candlestick to pull back to see what this candlestick looked like. But again, that is waiting for too much confirmation. And something I've been working on recently is just getting better at, okay, I see a signal here. My entry doesn't have to be perfect. I want to be more perfect with my stop loss, and my stop loss down here at the lows, I think is a great spot, because if this is going to bottom here, this is going to be the lows. And if it's just going to continue lower, I'm fine jumping out of the trade when it breaks this, because to me, that's when the signal is broken and this is not going to reverse. And so why I'm being a little more patient and not jumping in aggressively or larger size is because I think that we are kind of in a funky spot. We're not down at a stronger level. But to me, this is a pretty solid double bottom. To me, I think if this was going to keep going lower, this was a pretty good lower high and push lower. Like, this looked like a fake to the upside. And then seeing this strong bullish candlestick after this kind of double bottom here, I think that to me is a pretty good smaller time frame signal. Um, 15-minute chart to just look at this real quick. Not a crazy amount going on here. I do like the idea just in general today of jumping in on a pullback to the upside. And sometimes it's hard to know exactly what that pullback looks like. Ideally, I would prefer it to come down here. But a little fake below this does to me also look like a pretty good pop to the upside. And so I'm actually in a long trade right now on this. And we're just going to kind of see what happens. I think once it'll be interesting to see how it tests this. I think it needs to pop up here at least before I go break even. I want to give this some room to play out. I'll hold through a pullback to here, because again, this is kind of choppy. And so we'll kind of see how this plays out. Let me know if you guys have any questions on that, because that did kind of just happen quickly. And the big thing was I was kind of looking for this, but definitely conflicted. But I did like how this to me looked like a fake lower, and then just how this double bottom kind of presented itself. To me, that makes it, we had this big move down here that could just be kind of a fake lower to go higher. And if that plays out, this is a great spot to enter in on. I'm not married to this trade. This trade doesn't need to be right. It's more about jumping in when kind of that bottom signal happens, and letting it play out over time. For me, my struggle is always trying to get married to the individual trade, waiting for a perfect confirmation instead of, okay, I see a pretty good signal here, and then managing the trade and my risk based on size, So I take a stab here, even when I'm not super confident in it because of, kind of in a choppy day. And so if it loses, it's not as big of a deal because it's half size. And then I can, when I'm more confident in things, I can size in a little bit more. And so we'll just kind of see how this plays out. It might take a while to get going. I think there's totally reasons that we could continue lower. But again, it's not about trying to be perfectly right every time. You don't need to be perfect in trading to make money consistently. It's more about, okay, if we bottom here, I'm in it and I caught it based on that signal. If that signal plays out, how can I capture the market if it pops up to the highs or if it continues to the upside? There is kind of a downtrend here, this kind of guy. And so we'll kind of just see, and I can definitely, there's potential that I can have a chance to reduce my risk if this pops up here and looks like it's just going to continue lower. Using the same logic, this could be a pullback from the previous downtrend. Hard to know which downtrend you're talking about in terms of time frame, but totally. Again, it's like there's probably people like trying to bet short here. There's so many different ways to look at the market. And I'm not looking for a big picture. If we go to the big picture, I'm not looking for this to just skyrocket here. Even if we pop up to the highs and we're going to continue lower from there, I'll still get out at, a profit. There's so many scenarios that can play out. And, you just kind of got to wait for this to play out. Will I scale out? Probably not for this trade. I think if we just, it really depends on how it plays out. If we just pop up here, I'll probably just get out. Just because I think the likelihood that it pulls back is pretty high in this pretty choppy market. But if we kind of just continue higher like this in a nice trend, maybe I'll scale some out here and then let the rest kind of to see what happens. Why would I disrespect this yellow trend line? To me, because to me, I could see the market, I guess that it kind of matches these lows too. But this kind of move, I think, is enough to potentially break it. And it was far enough away that I think that, there's some bigger picture signals that could push us to the upside. And a lot of the times I like to look at, okay, well, this move here was really big enough that it could, that could be a catalyst to reversing here and breaking this to the upside. And so we might pop up here and just reverse off this level. But if that's the case, I do have a chance to, it's almost like it's far enough away that I do have a chance to reduce some of my risk on the trade. And so if it was like right here, closer, that's different. And to me, this micro trend here was broken. Just kind of waiting on this pullback here. And this is why I'm kind of smaller size. Because I think it's going to be tricky and it could just totally continue lower. Right now in my trading, I'm almost not focusing on P&L as much. I'm almost focusing on entering in on signals and pushing through needing that perfect confirmation. Because to me, that's something I want to work on. And then once I kind of get a little more comfortable with that, because right now there's some of the spots I'm jumping in, like let's say this one, and it turns out to be loss. Some of them don't play out, and then there's other ones where I'm not jumping in, and they are playing out. And so the math hasn't really had time to play out yet because I'm not entering in on every spot. And so that's kind of the variance of how trading works sometimes is the like last week, the spots I was entering in on ended up losing, and one of the spots I didn't enter in on ended up winning. And if I was in on that as well, well, my week would have been profitable. And so, you have to kind of, that's the process of getting better and better at trading, is kind of breaking down how those emotions affect your trading so you can consistently execute your strategy. Because if you don't consistently execute it every time, you're going to miss out on things that make it actually play out how it should. And so right now, that's why I'm trying to not get too married on the P&L that I'm producing, because I am almost changing and focusing on a couple of things in my trading. And then once I kind of get in the groove, I'm going to actually size up, and then that size up will make, these losses not really seem like that much. I'm wanting to my stop loss I keep having on my order is just so small. I'm trying to just make it a little bigger here. I'm just making a different template on the side. Have I ever traded options? Yes. I switched to futures because trading options, I felt always just made it way overly complicated. I like the simplicity of futures in terms of like they're as simple as trading stocks. And then they have the leverage that options give you. And I keep wanting to look at the S&P 500 for confirmation, but I'm not going to do that because that's not something I'm doing anymore. And so that's just like an impulse I'm having of wanting to click to look at that chart. And in reality, there's no reason for me to do that. That's in a way just looking for confirmation bias to help my mental state, 0 out of 6 entry checklist. There you go. The confirmation to jump in on this was this big candlestick here. I liked this double bottom. I liked how really the signal for me was this big flush of a candlestick breaking this low, breaking the low of this support, and then recovering. I didn't like it here because to me that looked like it could just be a bait and continue lower. And then seeing that fail, seeing it kind of retest this low and then have this big candlestick rip back up. To me, that's like, okay, if this is going to be the bottom, that's a great spot. With it being choppy though, and I think that kind of reduces the likelihood of this playing out. You can see right now we're just sitting here chop festing. But how I want to change that, instead of just not getting in because things aren't perfectly set up, I would rather jump in with smaller size and control and reduce my risk that way. Because we don't know how this is going to play out. Like if this thing just shot up here, I would have felt stupid that I didn't get in. Or if we just bounce around here for a while and then eventually go up and the trade works out, I would have, felt stupid to not get in. And then obviously if it sells off, I don't think I'll feel stupid that I didn't get in because again, I'm not trying to get married to every trade working out. to me, this is a spot where things might reverse. And even not on this checklist is kind of the timing of 10 o'clock of seeing the market kind of do some fakes lower, and then looking to kind of go higher. But we're also not at a major support. And so that's why I wanted to be a little more cautious too. But also realizing that, well, if the market's strong enough, this is a support where it could bounce. But, so far this does look like it's going to could just grind lower, but we might just start to move here. A lot of times the moves have been starting around 10:30. They'll maybe bottom a little bit, chop around, and then kind of get going. There's no point in me moving my stop up yet. I don't want to move my stop up here because this could make one more flush lower and then continue higher. To me, there's no point in moving my stop until we kind of actually get going here. Because you could just, especially in a choppy market, you want to have a wider stop because you're more likely, if you have a tighter stop, to just get chopped out. And that's hard mentally because in chop, you're sitting there waiting. You're sitting there watching the market move against you, move for you. It's an emotional roller coaster. And so you want to protect yourself, mentally, you want to reduce that risk and move the stop. But you don't want to, that's when you don't want to do it. When the market's moving very fast in your favor, that's when you want to adjust your stop. I'm currently long the NASDAQ, yes. Basically we have, essentially we just made a higher low on a 5-minute, which is pretty nice. We're hitting this downtrend. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. I think this is going to break just with how this is acting. But again, it's going to probably be slower and more agonizing than I want it to be, but that's how trading is, especially in a choppy market like this. And so trading smaller size also helps with that, because if I was full size right now, the emotions would be more intense. How do I measure volatility day to day? One thing that helps me is just I have horizontal lines at every tick. And so just looking at the chart horizontal lines, you can kind of see the volatility change from day to day. But also just watching the same market every single day makes it easy for me to know, like, oh, this is a volatile day. We're having this candlestick right here is, 30 points. Like, that's a big candlestick for this late in the day. That's just another thing I think that helps with trading the same market every day, is you just get way more in tune with that stuff. And it just helps you. So kind of a downtrend. Still, we might not have broken this yet. You could expand it out here. But definitely a nice little breakout here above this. Maybe we pull back here. If we, again, run up here, I think, depending on how that plays out, we'll see. It would be nice to try and hold on if the market's just going to do this. But again, I don't want to try to get married to it in terms of thinking that, oh, well, big picture, we're going to have a massive move to the upside now. We've been kind of choppy this morning. It might just be kind of slow, and we might hit here and just reverse lower, especially with how today is. So, I'll trail my stop up below this low, because I think, pullback wise, definitely could pull back here. I don't want to do it to break even just yet, because we could spike and go higher. But I think as we start to get up here, I might think about scaling out some or just taking everything off, seeing how this plays out. But if it starts to really get going, you know, there is the potential to just shoot up today. You know, we do have crazy fair value gaps to the upside. Plus 300 for the day. See you tomorrow. Awesome to hear. Hopefully this trade works out in my favor too. Little micro resistance level probably here with this. You know, this is pretty much the opening price that we're at. This is definitely a spot where if it's weak, it could turn. But this is, you know, I don't want to scale out yet because I think in a healthy move, we pull back to here and continue higher. We're not so overextended to the upside, and also big picture, like this move is just starting to play out if it's going to play out. I don't want to, after waiting for this the whole time, I don't want to be scared and just get out here. Because risk reward wise, then I'm not even giving myself the chance to get a positive risk reward ratio. You know, there would have been no point in entering this trade of risking, you know, let's say 1 to make less than 1. I need to be up here. You know, my target will be up here somewhere. I would be great to get 2. Obviously, it kind of depends on how the market plays out, but we're still in the middle of this range, and really we could only just be starting to accelerate. And so a pullback here is totally reasonable to these highs, or if it wants to pull back to here, this resistance trend line that now turns into maybe a support trend line. That's the hard thing about having a fluid management style, which I don't suggest beginners do right away, because it's emotionally, it's hard to do that. It's hard to control yourself during a trade. Do I use leverage? Futures pretty much are always leveraged. So yes. Is that a part of my NinjaTrader package? I'm not sure which indicator you're talking about. This risk reward one is. This little candlestick countdown timer next to the bar is. This checklist is. And then also this click trader that allows me to just use a hotkey to enter in. Again, they're not necessary to trade. Bluntly, actually, I think the risk reward tool is kind of necessary to trade on NinjaTrader. You can use something like a sticky note or something, but obviously that's not very fun. But they're designed just to be quality of life upgrades. You know, the only other indicator I use is like the fair value gap indicator, like on a 5-minute, and there's a free one on NinjaTrader. Where's take profit? At the highs, pre-market highs, pretty much. I don't have an actual profit target order because I'm just going to be scaling up. Or trailing up my stop, sorry. I don't think, actually I can break up my stop loss order here with how I have my NinjaTrader set up. I think at the moment I'm going to go break even though for sure. I think if we had a little pullback, we made a new high here. If this just rips, get me out at break even. Obviously, that would suck. And I think as we punch up here, I'll probably at least scale up 2 contracts pretty tight and see if it looks like it's going to do something like this, like a tight trend maybe, to try and see if I can capture a breakout to the upside. But again, on a choppy day like this, I think it's more likely we pop up here and reverse. And so definitely want to be very in tune with how that is playing out. Trying to be patient with this one. I mean, on a 5 minute, it looks good. You know, I like this on a 5 minute. That's a really nice higher low. 5 minute though, we could pull back and, you know, it could take a while. I would like to just get a punch up here and I think scale out half at the highs and then kind of see, you know, pull through a little pullback. Because I think if we break in a healthy manner, if we break up here, pull back to this previous high and bounce, that to me is strong. I'm okay holding through that pullback. But I don't want to hold through a pullback like this, because if we pull back all the way down here, that's too much. Like in terms of money to give back, but also to me, I think if this is going to continue higher and be strong, this is where I want to see it bounce. That to me is a strong pullback for continuing higher. And if we're going to slow down here and pull back, I'm going to give this a little wiggle room because, again, I think this is kind of a major resistance here. It could be stronger than the highs because we did kind of test this 3 times today. But right now we're just kind of like consolidating. And we already had a little flush here, which I like. In terms of if we just rip here, you know, I could consider scaling up here and scaling out too if this looks like, well, okay, well, if this is where it's going to reverse. We'll kind of see. So just kind of watching this pretty intently with how these candlesticks are happening. If we start to try and break lower, maybe I'll scale out. But it looks like it's just consolidating. I would like to see it break higher one more time before thinking about trailing up half size, because this does look like it's looking pretty good, actually. I think if it was going to pull back, it would have done that. And if it just stabs a little high there and then reverses, we'll kind of see as well. So sorry for, you know, missing a lot of questions and stuff. Just kind of, you know, really focusing on this position I have right now. Because I think this market's tricky right now in terms of, I think it could just flip at a dime pretty easily. And I don't want to give back too much. I think actually right here, this big bullish candlestick I like in terms of a low. I think if it gives back this bullish candlestick, that's definitely not a great sign. Maybe I'll put my stop here. You know, that to me is a good breakout candle. It'll push up, pull back a little bit, and continue if it's going to. And so a break below that candlestick, I think, is a good signal of a fake higher. So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna put my stop below that. See how this rides up. Again, if we shoot up here, I'm gonna trail this contract up pretty tight. And this one, I'm gonna move up here as well, pretty much. I'm just gonna keep them a little separated just so I can easily click on them. Nice little spike there. Again, like what I was just saying is we've broke above this. A pullback to there is totally, I think, healthy. This is a nice little breakout after this consolidation. So I want to let it play out here. And this is kind of, you know, what I was looking for. We're at a good spot. Big picture, you know, this could just start to accelerate. And so that's why I don't want to just scale everything out. But I am going to move, you know, a stop up here. I'm just going to be trailing this thing up as we move higher. Because also on the flip side, again, keep in mind we're in a choppy day. This could get overextended and just rip back. And so I don't want to give those profits back either. So I'm going to keep one. I'm going to keep one contract with the idea that, okay, we might pull back and do this. And then I'm going to have another one that's kind of just tightening, staying a lot tighter with this move up. Watch for a little pullback, basically a candlestick trailing stop loss at this point with just how fast this is moving. Because I think this is definitely a spot where we kind of top out if we are going to. And so that's why you want to try and be fluid of, okay, well, if we top out, how do I want to scale out? And if we just hit this and pull back, how do I try and capture that as well? And so that's the hard part about trading is you can't play everything perfect all the time. That's a nice candlestick pullback if it's just going to keep going higher. There is kind of this trend potential. It's not great, but I'm just going to leave my stop here where it is. Just give this a little room. NinjaTrader does have paper trading. You can go practice demo trading and get real data. Five minutes still looks good. But again, like this is a spot where if we're going to reverse, it's totally possible. And so I don't want to get married to trying to give it too much wiggle room to shoot higher. We could pull down to this level. I think that's totally healthy to continue higher. With my stop right here, it's kind of interesting in terms of like, I'd almost be getting stopped out. I almost want to move this down a tiny bit just because, I'd be stopping myself basically where I would assume it to support. I would want to, if I was getting out more tighter, I should have done it up here. So a little mismanagement there in terms of how this played out. But if this punches up one more time, I'll definitely trail this up. Just trying to see how it holds this trend line and if it kind of makes a new a run at a new high here. And then this is the pre-market high, the top of this box. And so that's definitely a nice candlestick to trail up on because I think if it breaks the low of that, it's definitely, oh, big random spike there. Just going to trail up below that spike because that's a nice little low now. Who knows what that was from? That was some serious glitch volatility. I think pretty much I'm just going to have both stops at this level now. I think we're moving up fast enough. This trend line it's holding, whatever that spike was, I think that makes a good little low if it's going to continue higher. I don't want to hold for the bigger trend right now. I think I'm just going to stick with the kind of more micro move that we're having because this market's strong enough that if it's going to continue, it's going to continue. We're having a good little micro enough pullbacks. We pretty much just tested this high just there. And if it pulls back in a healthier way and knocks me out, I'm okay with that. I just want to stay for the easy money right now. I'm not looking for, in this more choppy market, I don't think holding for a larger pullback to think it's going to go higher is the right call. I think just getting in on this faster move is the way to do it. So if we're just going to get knocked out here, that's totally fine. Big picture, this is an unhealthy move to the upside if it's gonna reverse. I'm not gonna short here. But we're at the major spot where we will reverse if we're going to. So seeing if this knocks me out here. Looks like it will. I'll just take that nice little swing to start the day off, the week off. Am I trading real cash? This is real money. I don't do prop firms. There's a little 3 right here that I think you can see. I hide my account number, but there's a little 3 there. That wouldn't be there if it was demo or a prop firm. So out on that trade, I mean, that's a nice little double top. You know, I think there was no point in trying to hold more because it could just flush in this market. So I'm totally happy with that trade. To give you exact numbers, just under 1,000. So a little over 1-to-1. I mean, not crazy, but also like that was a great little trade for the market we're in right now. You know, with this just like choppy market back and forth. I wasn't confident enough to do larger size. To me, I think the management was trading smaller size. And that was a good call for me today. You know, I'd rather start the week off with either a small loss or a small win and just kind of get a feel for the market, because obviously on Friday, we had some crazy moves, and who knows what is going to help. Can I fix my indicators website link? Not sure what you're talking about there. I don't know if the link's broken or something. But I believe they should be working. Do I take trades off camera? I don't. I stream pretty much what I do in the morning. Do I have a video on my setup? I actually have a new NinjaTrader video coming out this weekend. But so that's kind of, let me know if you guys have any questions on that. Yeah, I can recap the trade because, you know, I'm not going to take another trade today. We could reverse up here, but so big picture kind of walking through the trade was, if I zoom kind of back, you know, 5 minute, you know, if you listen to me earlier, like I think we could have gone either direction today, especially with the choppiness this morning, but we had kind of this micro support. I would have preferred to wait to down here. I thought this was a stronger support with just these levels. But, you know, I didn't want to discount this spot. Just because, you know, I think ideally the idea is that, okay, we bounce here and push higher. Like I'm just looking for a pullback today to continue higher because that's what the pre-market trend is. You know, we have such a massive move from Friday. We could continue higher. Or on the flip side, if we shot up this morning, I would have looked for a short. I think today is just more of a bait direction day. And so, you know, going into a 1 minute chart, we kind of just chopped around for a while. We came down to here. And so, you know, going through the checklist is, you know, the trend line. Again, I think we could kind of go at either direction. We're at that reversal zone. And then an unhealthy move. To me, this was an unhealthy move, especially this candlestick. This big candlestick breaking this low, to me, sends signals in my mind of, okay, we just had a huge move to the downside, breaking this low. It could continue lower, and I thought actually, based here, I thought it was going to continue lower. But the idea is, if this is going to bottom, you know, you want to just try and be unbiased and think about direction and signals. If this is going to bottom here and shoot up, what I want to see is this candlestick, this big bullish move start to fail. And to me, this was a bait higher, this move. It looked like it was going to go higher here. And then it started to push and maybe make a new low. But if it doesn't make a new low, like it did, and it actually had a big bullish candlestick, this is exactly where I entered in on. I entered in above this. And so, you know, then I just entered in there with my stop down here with the idea of, hey, if this is going to play out, you know, my entry didn't feel perfect. I was kind of back and forth on, you know, the choppiness, this level not being, you know, the level down here that I thought was stronger. But, you know, my stops down here, which is really what I'm trying to focus on. The stop is more important than entry. You don't need it to be perfect. The entry need to be perfect to be able to capture a move. I think it's more about jump in when the signal's there and put your stop where it makes sense, you know, because the idea is the trade's still in play for me until this level gets broken or it starts to push up. And then from there, you know, it kind of just pushed up. And then once we got up here, I definitely saw the potential for this to happen. But with just how the today was, I felt like it was better to just scale out both. Obviously, in hindsight, if this just rockets up, but you don't want to try not to beat yourself up too much about that. I thought this was a good spot. I did think maybe that it comes down and tests this level or tests kind of where this breakout happened because it did get a little excited. That to me is still a healthy pullback. But to me, it felt like holding a contract all the way down there was a little too much. So that's kind of my trade walkthrough there. And so, pretty much it closed up. I only did half size because of some of that thought of being not super hyped on the day in terms of this feeling like it was choppy. So, got about 1,000. Where do you download the indicators checklist? It should be, actually I might, if you're a paid subscriber, I actually might have goofed up and not put it in there. I might have only put it in the lifetime members section, and that's my fault. I will, after this I am done, I will put it in there. I'm just gonna put a note on my phone to update that. So check back in a couple hours, and it should be there. So I apologize about that. Do I trade the first 15 minutes? I usually don't, because I want to see what the market's doing. I want to see how things are playing out. To me, that the first 15 minutes can be so jittery. Even here, like this was just like there's no. It's very easy to think, oh, this is a short signal, this is a long signal, and being patient has paid off for me with that kind of stuff. Chickened out on holding and getting out too early. That's the chop is like this today is very hard. But that's where sizing in and having smaller size does help. For this trade, how much did I risk? I risked about $840 for this trade. So the risk, it was kind of 1-to-1 where it played out. But if it played out a little more, I would have got 2, right? So it's I try and go into a trade with the target of at least 1.5 to 2 in this market. Generally, things have been obviously, like, I usually like to go for 3x, but this market is just trickier, and so I find that my trades have been the stops are needing to be wider, which reduces your the amount of money you're going to make on the other side. And so generally it's like my target is like, okay, if I can target 1.5, and maybe if it gets going I can get 2 or 3, that's to me is a good risk amount right now. Where do I see this pulling back so you can get in? I wouldn't get in at this point. To me, my edge is the morning, looking for a push to the one direction and then reversing that if it makes sense. And so that's pretty much what I just look for every morning. After this, I couldn't tell you. It could pop up here and reverse, or it could just continue higher. Like my read is over at this point. That's why I really try and just master the first 60 minutes of the day. What fair value gap helped me for this move? I wouldn't say there was as much of a fair value gap, at least to the reversing. It was much more of going with, okay, the bigger picture trend, and I didn't even look at this. I didn't actually, in hindsight now, this looks like a really nice pullback to that trend line. Just confirming off of these moves. That would have been actually really nice to see as confirmation, entering in on that trade. But you're not always gonna see everything. And so, fair value gaps were definitely more on the 15-minute time frame of like, okay, are we going to just continue reversing this crazy down move? And what does a pullback to get in on that trend look like? How to mark your fair value gaps is from, it's a free indicator on NinjaTrader. Do I trade? I live stream my trading every single day that I trade, which is usually 4 to 5 days a week. The first, 2 hours of the market. I start 9 Eastern Standard Time, and then kind of go till, about now, depending on if I'm in a trade or not. If I wasn't in a trade yet, I would be done for the day. New NinjaTrader setup video should be this weekend, but I will say, I don't think the system has really changed that much. So if you want your risk reward tool to look like mine, it's actually a custom indicator that I have. And so you do have to buy it. I will put a link in the chat for if you want to check that out. It's actually currently on sale for a couple days. My strategy is still the same. I always kind of release an update video, but it's pretty much the same. I'm just looking for reversals off of major trend lines or support zones or resistance zones. Why do so many people watch me? Your guess is as good as mine. A lot of people really find how I talk about trading really helpful, especially in terms of the mental side of things. The patience really helps people. A lot of people find that how I focus on one specific setup every single day without fail and being patient and waiting for that it is a breath of fresh air compared to, I guess, what other people do, because it's so, especially as a beginning trader, it's so easy to FOMO into all these kind of different moves and just focusing on one specific strategy day in and day out. I think a lot of people don't realize is really helpful right away. So that's what I do every day, and people find value in that. Not everyone. A lot of people even say they don't even do my exact strategies. Just listening to how I talk about trading and me being patient and talking through that stuff out loud and my struggles helps them trade better, even if they're not trading the same thing. So that's my goal. My goal isn't here that you come in here and copy what I'm doing, because frankly, I'm not always making money myself. Like I am right now, I'm doing a big adjustment in my trading of trying to be more aggressive. And my P&L hasn't been great recently because of that. And also because I'm streaming. I'm new to that and for like 2 months. And that adds a lot of stress for my trading and pressure. And so, my goal is over time that obviously that gets lessened, and I get better and I can be making consistent money streaming, for, showing you guys my trading. But it's just, that's a part of trading. It's always a consistent growth process, and your P&L isn't going to necessarily match the growth that you're having in your trading. Appreciate all the kind words, guys. I will be back tomorrow. I'll answer a couple more questions here, but then kind of close up for the day because pretty much done. You remember about your questions disappear. I apologize that, there are a lot of people watching to where I can't answer every question. And so I definitely try and get to as many as possible, but especially if I'm paying attention to the charts, I can't get everything. Platform I use is NinjaTrader. I'm only trading futures, the NASDAQ futures. There's a link for that. Also, if you're new, go to my YouTube channel. I have a ton of tutorials on how to use my strategy. Like if you scroll down and go to learn my strategy playlist, this will talk about futures and how they work. This is how I draw my levels. Actually, this doesn't talk about futures, sorry, but this kind of gives a good overview. And then this talks about how I draw my support and resistance levels, and then my entry checklist, and then also my NinjaTrader setup, and as well here is this one's explains how futures work, as well as this one does too. So that'll give you a ton of information there. So that's gonna kind of be it. I will see everyone tomorrow. Appreciate you guys being here as always. And that's what you can do every day. Just come in, focus on your strategy. Obviously, in hindsight, it would have been great if I held through this pullback, but you want to you can only do is so good with the unknown information. You never know what the market's going to do, and so that's why you want to just try and stick to your strategy, and not let your emotions control what you do, right? Because I was nervous to enter down here, but the signal was there, and obviously in hindsight now, it was a great entry. So I will be on tomorrow, 30 minutes before the stock market opens at 9 Eastern Standard Time. And so I will see you guys there. Have a good rest of your day.